everybody. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady with my co-host, JC.
Wendy, it's a pleasure to be back. How are you doing?
You know, I would like to say after the Labor Day holiday that I'm all relaxed, but that's not the case.
Oh, no.
I was relaxed until actual Labor Day, which I did help a bunch of friends out on teaching them how to use LinkedIn to find jobs and clients and candidates. And then I just had some house issues like a leaking water area. I'm like, no, it's supposed to be the last day of relaxation. And now I have to fix a water issue. But
man.
As far as I know, I will really test it tomorrow. Anyways, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Just on the backside of that rest and recuperation, getting back into the week. It's been, kind of the same vein, just very busy, but no water issues. My plumbing's good.
That's probably a good thing. I was actually just reading, speaking of water, about, we were supposed to have a really big active hurricane season here on the East Coast or in the United States, and it's kind of being delayed, and I really hope it sticks that way. I was reading all the reasons why, and one of them's late release of Saharan dust. So I'm like, that stuff kills me and kills my brain, but mental health is very important to me, and a hurricane blows my mental health. But speaking of, I did want to talk about today about mental health care, and that the fact is mental health care is health care. I recently just was asked to publish an article in HRM Outlook magazine, and that is exactly what I talk about in there about, I'm more about empowering managers to help their employees via benefits education. So managers need to know what benefits the company has. So when they see their employee is struggling or something like that, that they say, hey, we have, a benefit for that, an EAP, healthcare, doctor's visits, whatever it might be. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm in this mode of pregnant pause because I'm sitting here, Wendy, and I'm thinking about just healthcare in general and some of the programs that are out there and whatnot. And the first thing that comes to mind is just like how daunting the entire thing is financially, unfortunately. I got to be honest.
It really is. I mean, there's so many other countries, civilized countries in the world that just provide healthcare for all their residents and citizens. And I really hope someday that we as the United States can get there, because it is incredibly confusing and expensive to both the employer and the employee.
You're exactly right. I mean, when we're thinking about the global impact of it all, depression, anxiety, it actually winds up costing the global economy $1 trillion annually in lost productivity. There's a highlighted need there for workplace mental health care. And that's not just from me. That's from the World Health Organization. They support that claim.
Yeah. And I even want to say a step further, JC, not even just, workplace mental health or workplace healthcare, just healthcare, period, in the United States and access to it. There fortunately are a lot of options out there for possibly people that are in poverty, usually through a nonprofit or a state program. But, what qualifies as poverty? You got to be really, really poor to be qualified as poverty in the United States. Most middle income earners, employees may not be able to afford to even go to a doctor's visit for like the flu, never mind for a mental health care issue such as depression. And that is just, it blows my mind that we as, citizens and residents don't demand more change. Another stat that I listed in my article as well was about the fact that in the U.S. workforce, 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year, resulting in up to, listen to this, $193.2 billion in lost earnings for businesses. So somebody might be there and they might show up because they don't have PTO, they don't have sick time, or they don't want to burn it, but it doesn't mean they're actually doing their best performance of the day.
I just wound up pulling a statistic, a piece of info about that poverty line, like you were talking, because, we tend to get self-centered sometimes and think about ourselves and, maybe we have a lot of bills or things are tough this month or something, but there's a lot of people like really struggling, seriously. And in the U.S., believe it or not, according to the Department of Health and Human Services for 2024, the federal poverty guidelines for a household of one person, that's $14,580 a year. For a household of 4, That's $30,000 a year.
Can you even imagine? Can't even
How
imagine.
can you live on that, though?
Household of two, never mind a household of one, even on $30,000. Like, where are you living now? Many places across the United States, is probably not a main city or near a main city, that you could actually afford rent and groceries in that area. But that's very far and few between. And if you're stuck in those areas that are low cost of living and, maybe, that also means low job aspects too. So this is a really big issue that's near and dear to my heart, healthcare period in the United States, but then nowadays focusing even more in mental health. And let me just say, when I say nowadays, it's because younger generations are not afraid to talk about this. So thank you, Gen Z. Thank you, millennials, for saying, you know what, we have issues and we're not afraid to talk to us. Baby boomers, you were kind of like shunned. You weren't supposed to talk about anybody's personal health, never mind your own. God forbid you talk about your divorce or the fact that you may have lost a child or that you have an illness. Gen X, we kind of skated both lines, like, oh, we'll talk about it if we think it's acceptable. Millennials and Gen Z said, no, we're talking about it because these are worldwide issues and we need to make sure everybody's educated on that.
Interestingly, outside the United States, Wendy, if we go just slightly north to Canada, around 500,000 Canadians miss work weekly due to mental health issues. And that costs the Canadian economy over $51 billion annually.
500,000 people missing work because of mental health issues. And you know what? That's probably only the people that reported it. There's probably a lot more than that. And people may just not even know that they're having a mental health care breakdown because it's never been, they've never been educated on it. They're just thinking they're having an off day. Something's wrong with them. They may not even say, hey, employer, I'm calling in because of a mental health care day. So, the whole purpose of me talking about this today on our podcast is most of our listeners are small business owners, managers of those businesses, or HR in any size business. And so it is so, so important that whoever you are listening to this, whatever your role is, we really, really need to educate all levels of managers, supervisors, team leads, even on just a high level, like, hey, here's the benefits that our company offers. And even if we don't offer it, here's where you can get additional help in our community, maybe through a community health service, the state, the county government, things like that. But it is super, super important for managers to know what their benefits are, not only on the hiring side, but just on the going day to day, helping our employees through life. And I don't know, also maybe helping them with early intervention so that it doesn't cost the employee more money than it should. And if they're on the employer's health plan, so it doesn't cost the employer's health plan more than it should.
Interestingly, managers are often the first to notice signs of mental health issues in employees. According to the National Business Group on Health, 70% of managers believe they could better support their team if they had more mental health training. And that right there highlights the need for early intervention.
And please don't take this as, oh, by the way, your managers are now going to be a mental health care coach. It's really to notice the signs of mental health issues, not diagnose them. We leave that to the medical professionals, but where they, so many managers that I even talk to, heck, even HR people that I talk to say, I could see that my employee's having a breakdown, or I think they're, depressed, or I think they might even be suicidal. But it's not up to them to do the diagnosis, but they should be able to go ding, ding, ding. I know who to go to for help. And where is that? My first stop would be the employee assistance program, which means for those listening today, even if you don't have a healthcare plan, please look into getting an employee assistance program. It's usually listed as EAP, although that does stand for other things too. But you can get an employee assistance program fairly cheap without having a health insurance plan. I think the general analysis or, a decision is usually like, oh, it's with our Blue Cross plan. Sure, throw it in there. But you can get a completely separate EAP program that's going to help your managers help the employees, and then your employees help themselves and their family members so that they can get back to work and being, close to 100% productive as they can be.
I've heard a lot of employees over a very long span of time, Wendy, and I'm old. You wouldn't know anything about that. My point here, though, is that a lot of employees over a long span have said it's really, really hard sometimes to get through on these EAP lines, and or when they do, what is offered to them is not consistent. Like they might get 2 or 3 visits, but then they're on their own and it's something not covered by insurance. Any advice there?
Yeah. So I do have to say, since the pandemic, since the COVID pandemic, I really do think the bad EAPs went away and the good EAPs really upped their game. There's text messaging capability now, email capability, online chats. So I really do think a lot of them moved to like systems, so it would be a lot easier for somebody of any age, whether you're someone who likes to pick up the phone and call somebody. There's Zoom options. I don't know if they actually use Zoom. They may use something else that is more secure, but there's definitely a lot of online options too, because even the EAP providers don't, necessarily want to be doing in-person sessions just because of COVID alone. And let's face it, most companies are doing some kind of remote work, even if it's like, hey, we have a kiosk in the break room. Well, the kiosk in the break room is not the appropriate place to be handling mental conversations or any healthcare conversations. And so please move that kiosk if they're allowed to use that, or that free laptop because they don't have one at home. Please use it to somewhere that actually has, locked door and windows that can be blocked. So if a person needs to go in there and cry or just lay down or talk to an actual medical professional, that they can do so at work. Maybe they, take a break, take some deep breaths, get their act back together and come back to work, or decide I need to leave altogether because now I'm in a safety issue.
A survey by the American Psychological Association, the APA, found that 89% of employees who feel that their employer genuinely cares about their well-being are actually more motivated to do their best work, which ultimately then leads to increased job satisfaction and loyalty. Wendy, it seems to be all about building trust.
It's 100% about building trust. On my holiday weekend, I actually had these conversations with several of my friends who are having mental health crises because of the overloaded amount of work that their employers keep pouring on them. Why do they keep doing that? Because people are leaving that organization and they can't replace them enough. So they're just piling work onto these individuals. This isn't anything new, but I would just hope these companies would have learned something through the COVID era. Like, hey, if you treat your employees less than amazing and you're piling work on them with no hope in the future of, okay, your workload's going to go back to normal, they're going to go find another job. Hello. But in the meantime, they're probably going to be calling off of work, upsetting your customers, your clients. They're going to be making mistakes. They're going to be burning up their PTO or sick time. And they're probably also going to be costing your insurance plan, if you have insurance, a lot of money that could have been prevented. But just by teaching your managers, A, how to be a manager, but B, above and beyond that, how to be a caring, empathetic human being that is knowledgeable about the benefits that our company offers and that can help our employees. It's like this big circle and it all comes together.
Wendy, I have a question for you. When we're thinking about making the program available and training the managers, that seems to be like part of it, but isn't there a whole nother part of it though too? Like as the employee, you don't want that badge tacked to your shirt, right? You don't want the letter A stitched on, right? There's a stigma. There's a barrier. I don't know. Talk to me about your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
No, thank you for bringing this up because it is a catch-22, right? You have to teach your managers and anyone that's involved in any kind of, helping your employee process. You have to teach them that conversation stays private between the manager and the employee. Maybe HR is involved because it does need to get, up to another level. Maybe another director is involved or something like that because a PTO needs to get approved. But generally speaking, we should not ever be discussing our employees' mental health, physical health, anything like that amongst the general population or even amongst other employees. The minute you say something, and this just goes for your friend base too, right? If the minute you tell somebody else like, oh, JC told me this about his mental health or Wendy told me this about her physical health, I'm never going to tell you that again. I'm never going to trust you. And it's going to take for me, probably forever for me to trust you again. And I'm going to be very wary of giving you any other information. The problem with that is if you're the only one that knows and now they feel that there's a stigma and they're not going to go to the employee assistance program or to the doctor, you might be responsible for something pretty detrimental that may happen to them because they felt there was this stigma. Like I said in the beginning of this conversation, JC, I do want to credit the younger generations for removing the stigmas, but it is culturally based as well. And so, even though the youngest generations are like, no, let's talk about mental health and our issues. We have no problem talking about that. It is based on different parts of the country, where you came from, where your family came from, how you were raised. And it's complicated. That's my whole point. It really is complicated. I'm more of an open book, or people think I am. There's still a lot of things I don't share with the general public or even with some of my friends. But for the most part, I'm an open book because I want other people to know you can tell me anything. I'm safe. But you do probably need to tell me, okay, this is confidential and nobody else knows about it. Otherwise, I might talk to your spouse about it and go, oh no, I didn't know that you didn't know. So this mental health, health care and conditions, it does get incredibly complicated. I don't want anyone to walk away from today thinking that you need to be a mental health care expert, a coach, somebody who diagnoses. You just need to know your employees. And if they're always in a decent mood and chatty and all of a sudden they're not, and it's not just a one-off day, you might want to go talk to them and say something as simple as, hey, you seem like you're having an off day. Is everything okay? And then shut up and listen.
You bring up a real fascinating point, and I'm sure that training would help really clarify where the bright lines are on this one, reducing the stigma and having that trust and confidence with the employee is one thing. But then being open to discuss and promote the mental health care is something radically different from a different perspective. If you operate as a manager in a shell where you never promote anything, but you never talk about anything, but people could come to you in your lockbox, but you're not talking about the programs. It's really hard. Research for the National Institute of Mental Health indicates that open discussions about mental health benefits, the programs, the promotion of these benefits done by leadership, it can help reduce the stigmas, and it could actually make employees 42% more likely to use mental health care resources at the same time. Training would definitely be helpful in that instance, I think.
And I think it's really even just training on how to say, I've noticed you are acting differently. Is there anything going on that I can help you with? And then shut up and listen, and then actually follow through on that. It's huge because the stigma is big. And let's face it, JC, the stigma is even bigger amongst males, right? Males are much less likely to go ahead and say, hey, I need a mental health care day. We pretty much have to beg most males in our lives, possibly you as well, to even just see a doctor on an annual basis, for that annual exam. Never mind saying, hey, you want to go see, a psychotherapist or, a psychiatrist. So much of society says, oh, that's not manly, or, you suck it up, buttercup, get over it. By the way, that is not what my book says. My book says, suck it up, buttercup, be a leader people will follow, which then goes on to say, be the person that says, you know what, we have an amazing EAP program, or we have an amazing healthcare program. I just used it myself and I talked to this therapist and it really, really helped me understand that, it's not just me that's going through this. Could you imagine if a leader said that and you were having about to have a nervous breakdown? You're like, oh, okay, it's acceptable for me to take the day off and use the benefits and go see a therapist and then maybe even talk to you, leader, about it again. That'd be pretty cool.
Definitely be wild.
So yes, what I really wanted to also bring this up about is, I don't know, this thing called social media. You think social media causes mental health care issues?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't care what age you are. I don't care if you're 16. I don't care if you're 12. I don't care if you're 45 or 70. There are many forums on social media that are quite out bullying, biased, discriminatory. and we get sucked into it and we take it personally. And so I really encourage anybody here today that's listening and saying, you know what, I might have a mental health care issue. Maybe just put down the social media for a couple days and or delete everybody or block everybody that is negative and follow happy news, right? Follow the Good News Network. There is a bunch of them that I follow now that only give good news. And then there's things about cats and dogs and bunny rabbits. I'm like, this is great. This is fantastic. This is making me feel some good endorphins. I'm turning around my bad day so that I can say, you know what? You were focused on bad things too much. But mental health care is not about having a good day or bad day. It is actually medical care that needs to happen. It's not about, oh, I had the wrong coffee or I didn't have enough coffee. That is a physiological issue that you might have not got enough sleep or something like that. But mental health care, you cannot shake it off. You can't sleep through it. You most likely need some medical intervention. So please, folks, if you do have an EAP program, make sure that you understand that your employees may not be comfortable with it. They may not even know about it. And JC also just shared with me studies that's shown that heavy social media use is linked to increased rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness. And I could 100% say I agree with that as well. I think most of us felt that effect during the lockdowns of COVID, depending on where you were located, because we were glued to social media for any kind of human interaction.
According to a survey by the Mental Health Foundation, 86% of managers in the UK believe that mental health training would help them better support their employees. Yet only 24% have received this type of training. This, though, highlights the significant gap and the need for education on recognizing and addressing mental health issues in the workplace.
You know what I think is interesting about that, JC, is, wherever you're located, Canada, US, UK, Mexico, and we had some stats on that as well. We all think that we're alone, like, oh, this is just our country's problem. But it turns out through all the stats that we shared today that this is a global issue. Mental health care is a global issue. And even with the countries that do have national health care and free health care or cheap health care, which we in the United States do not have, they still are having issues with mental health care. And I think it's just, I'd like to say, like, oh, this mental health issues aren't something new. It's just something that's newly talked about, right? There are our lives, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents had it. They were taught to shove them down way deep. And there was possibly other issues to deal with as well because of lack of access based on if you're a female or the color of your skin or whatever it might be. And that's a whole other bag of worms there. But don't just think that this is a United States issue, especially if you do have employees in other countries, or even if you have contractors in other countries. I was talking to somebody yesterday about contractors, independent contractors, consultants, people that own their own companies and that you bring them into work for you. They may not be your concern healthcare wise, but if they can't get the job done, a little conversation with them of saying, hey, the community health center down the road has cheap healthcare or free healthcare. You should go check it out. I was just there last week, or my neighbor was there last week, and it really helped then. With that said, if you'd like to hear more about this or any other topic, please reach out to me at any time. You can find information about what I offer on thehrlady.com. And if you have any topics on mental health care, regular health care, or any benefits that you want to share with our guests, please reach out to me so you can be a guest on our podcast. We hope this information has been helpful. Thanks for joining us and take care.